Halloween, for most of us, it's a day of costumes, candy, and fun. Children laugh as they knock on doors, parents watch proudly, and neighbors come together for one night of celebration. But sometimes, the scariest monsters don't wear masks. Sometimes they're the people we trust most. In 2012, in the small community of Broomfield Township, Michigan, one such monster was living right next door. He was a former pastor, a man of faith, a neighbor who seemed helpful, friendly, even fatherly. But under that mask was a history of violence and fantasies so dark that they would end in tragedy. This is the story of Rebekah Gay, a 24-year-old single mother whose life was brutally taken on Halloween morning by someone she should have been able to trust. Before we get started with this horrifying case, make sure to support me by subscribing to my channel and leave a like on this video so that I can bring more true crime content for you guys. Rebekah Gay was born in Michigan, and from an early age, she was known for her warmth and kindness. She grew up in a small town, part of a close-knit family who adored her. By the time she was in her 20s, Rebekah was working at Goodwill Industries in Mount Pleasant. Her co-workers later described her as cheerful, dependable, and always willing to lend a hand. But what truly defined her was her role as a mother. At just 24 years old, she was raising her 3-year-old son on her own. Friends said she was completely devoted to him. Every decision she made, every sacrifice, was for his future. Rebekah loved holidays. She decorated her trailer with pumpkins, lights, and ghosts for Halloween. That year, she'd picked out the perfect costume for her little boy. She was excited to take him trick-or-treating around the neighborhood. For her, it wasn't about parties or nightlife. It was about seeing her child smile. People who knew her described her as grounded. She wasn't flashy or dramatic. She was a good mom, a loving daughter, and someone who made others feel welcome. But as Rebekah prepared for Halloween morning in 2012, she had no idea that someone close to her was preparing for something very different. Rebekah lived in the Greenwood Township mobile home park in Broomfield Township, a quiet rural community. Just a few trailers away was 55-year-old John D. White. On the surface, White seemed like a harmless, even respectable, neighbor. He had once been a pastor at a local Christian church. He was friendly, sometimes helpful, and even babysat Rebekah's son from time to time. At one point, he had even dated Rebekah's mother, making him feel like part of the family. He was trusted. But beneath that mask was a man with a terrifying past. 1980: John White was engaged to a woman named Teresa Etherton. One day, without warning, he attacked her in bed and stabbed her more than 15 times. Somehow, Teresa survived. When she asked him why, White chillingly said, "I just wanted to know what it felt like to kill someone." He was sent to a psychiatric hospital but was released after just 2 years. In 1994, White struck again. He strangled 26-year-old Vicky Sue Wall in Kalamazoo, Michigan. He dumped her body in the woods. This time he was convicted of involuntary manslaughter and served just over 12 years before being released. Despite these violent crimes, White managed to slip back into society. By 2007, he was free once again. He even returned to church work, preaching sermons about morality and forgiveness. Privately, though, he admitted to struggling with violent fantasies. He told his parole officers and therapists about dark urges, especially the urge to strangle women. But somehow, despite these warnings, John White was allowed to live freely. By 2012, he was in Broomfield Township, living just steps away from Rebekah Gay. To her, he was just the neighbor, the former pastor, the man she sometimes trusted to watch her child. To himself, he was a man planning his next murder. October 31st, 2012, Halloween morning. Rebekah woke up early to prepare for work at Goodwill. She put on her costume and got her son ready for daycare. Later that night, she planned to take him trick-or-treating. But John White had other plans. For weeks, he had fantasized about killing again. He later confessed that he couldn't stop thinking about strangling a woman. On Halloween morning, he decided Rebekah would be his victim. White entered Rebekah's trailer while her son was still inside. Carrying a rubber mallet and zip ties, he attacked her. He struck her in the head, then looped a zip tie around her neck and pulled tight until she stopped breathing. The most chilling part, Rebekah's little boy was just feet away. Police later said it's possible he heard the attack, or even saw part of it, but at 3 years old, he couldn't fully understand what was happening. After the murder, White calmly turned his attention to the child. He dressed the boy in his Halloween costume, put him in his car, and drove him to his father's house, as if he were just doing a neighborly favor. No one suspected a thing. After dropping off the child, White returned to the scene. He wrapped Rebekah's body in plastic, loaded it into his pickup truck, and drove to a remote wooded area several miles away. There, he dumped her body and tried to cover it with leaves and debris. Back at the trailer, he attempted to clean the scene, but traces of blood remained. By later that day, friends and co-workers were growing worried. Rebekah hadn't shown up for work. She wasn't answering her phone. And when she failed to show up for Halloween festivities with her son, alarm bells rang. Her family reported her missing. Police began their search immediately. Detectives canvassed the neighborhood, asking questions. They quickly spoke with John White. At first, he acted calm. He pretended to know nothing about Rebekah's disappearance, but officers weren't convinced. It didn't take long for White's dark past to surface. 2 violent attacks on women, one resulting in a death. Suddenly, he was more than just a neighbor. He was the prime suspect. Within 2 days, under intense questioning, White cracked. He confessed in chilling detail. He told police how he struck Rebekah with the mallet, strangled her with the zip tie, and dumped her body in the woods. Then, he led them to the site. There, among fallen leaves and branches, they found the body of 24-year-old Rebekah Gay. The news devastated the community. Rebekah wasn't just another victim. She was a mother, a daughter, a friend. She had been preparing for a joyful Halloween night with her little boy, only to have her life stolen in the cruelest way. Neighbors were horrified to learn that John White, the man they trusted, the man who preached in church, was a murderer with a violent past. The question echoed through town. How was he even free to kill again? White had confessed violent urges for years. He had killed before. He had stabbed before. And yet, he was allowed to live freely among families, even babysitting children. The system had failed Rebekah. In December 2012, John White appeared in court. He didn't fight the charges. He pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. The judge sentenced him to 56 years in prison. At his age, it was effectively a life sentence. White himself admitted in court that he deserved to die behind bars. But he wouldn't serve long. Less than a year later, in August 2013, John White was found dead in his prison cell. He had taken his own life. For some, it was relief. He could never harm another person again. For Rebekah's family, it was bittersweet. They were denied the closure of seeing him live out his punishment. Rebekah's son was left without his mother. Her family stepped in to raise him, surrounding him with love to help him grow up strong despite the tragedy. Her murder raised serious questions about the criminal justice system. How many chances should a violent offender get? Why was John White paroled not once, but twice, despite clear evidence that he was dangerous? Experts have since used his case as an example of the failures of parole and psychiatric monitoring. White admitted to fantasies of murder, and yet was free to act on them. Rebekah Gay is remembered not for the way she died, but for the way she lived. As a loving mother, a devoted daughter, and a kind friend. Her story is a haunting reminder. The real monsters don't always come knocking on Halloween night. Sometimes they live right next door. Thank you for watching this episode of Unfiltered True Crime. If you value stories told with honesty and depth, please subscribe. I post new documentaries twice a week. Stay aware, stay safe, and as always, stay unfiltered.